Hello. Hello. Welcome, everyone, to the Tuesday night faculty lecture. My name is Esther. I'm the studio coordinator for Photography New Media. I just want to welcome everyone here. Thanks for coming. Before we begin, I would like everyone to take a moment to silence your cell phones so we don't interrupt tonight's presentations. Do so myself. I want to start by recognizing that Anderson Ranch, our campus resides on the historical tribal lands of the Ute people who called this area home for over 800 years. In honor of this legacy, we focus on building an inclusive community here, maintaining this as a place for inspiration and creativity at the center of the Rocky Mountains. Tonight's program will consist of 2 lectures. We will have a Q&A at the end, so be sure to have your questions ready, and we'll pass around a mic for you at that moment. Tonight, I would first like to introduce our first faculty, Gillian Laub. Thank you, thank you. I love when all the students are in the front row. Gillian is an artist who uses the camera to investigate political conflicts, complex family and community relationships, and challenging assumptions about cultural identity. Her monographs include Testimony and Family Matters. Another project, Southern Rights, is a 2-decade-long multimedia project that includes a monograph, an HBO feature film, and a traveling exhibition. So please let me welcome Gillian.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm a little bit jet lagged. It's 9 hours later where I came from, and I am not prepared for this altitude. So if I stumble on my words, please forgive me. It's so great to be here. It's like camp. I really feel like I'm at summer camp again. And I have a great class, so thank you for being in the front row. I'm going to start. It's really hard to condense over 20 years of work into 20 minutes. So I tried to just kind of distill it down to my 3 projects. So I'll start with Southern Rights. This began, I was working right after school, photography school. I was working as a freelance photographer for many different magazines. And one of the magazines, Spin Magazine, that I worked for, had the editor received a letter from a girl. It was more like a cry for help. Her sister, Anna, wrote a letter to Spin saying, please come to my town, tell the story of my town. I can't take my boyfriend to the prom. He's black, I'm white. We have separate proms. So when we got the letter, the prom had already passed, but actually the next segregated event that we went to was homecoming. So this is Julie and Bubba, this is Anna's sister, who took us around the town, and she and Bubba couldn't go to their prom. So this is actually homecoming, which seemed so normal. I mean, I come from a suburban town where like the Friday night football games were the biggest deal, so it felt very familiar, but what wasn't familiar was the fact that there was an actual ballot that had white girl, black girl, where all the students voted, and this was totally normal and commonplace. So this is the each representative of their class and their float. Later that evening, these were all the queens. There's a white queen and a black queen representing each class. So as you can see, this is their yearbook. I told you, I warned you. And it's just celebrated. So as you can see, the prior queens from the year before are, also separated by race and crowning this year's homecoming white and black queen. So I was in shock. I thought, I'm from New York, so I felt, I was kind of an outsider coming in, but I really thought that this was something that, you read about in history books. So I became pretty obsessed with this town and kept coming back. And the story got published, and it was before social media, so really the worst repercussions that happened were most people went to, I heard, the fallout. A lot of people went to, all over towns and like would buy all the spin magazines and throw them out because they didn't want anyone to see them. But unfortunately, as I was photographing there, people were not thrilled with the story that I did, and I was chased out of town a lot. So it took a while, and I tell the students, my students, you never give up. You have to just keep going. And I felt like I was on a mission to tell a really important story. And I really believe in photography's power and storytelling's power to make an impact and to make change, hopefully. So I kept going back, and this is Harley. She was the chair of they call it the white folks prom. She told me I could follow her, but she didn't want to talk about race. This wasn't about race. So it took me quite a long time to, build trust with the white community, but I was really welcomed with open arms by the Black community. And this is Kiki, and she's somebody that I still photograph till today. None of my projects ever end, even if it's like, a book or an exhibition. I just continue to kind of see how lives unfold. So this is Kiki at the Black prom. And this is the Lacey, the prom queen. And just so you know, text is so important to this work and all of my work. So obviously I can't get into that, but every single picture is accompanied by their first person words. So I really wanted this to be a project where they're speaking their truths. So after a few years of really trying to get access, I finally had a couple of families, Harley's family. She finally said that she would cooperate and talk freely. So this was 2009, where they're still having segregated proms. And Harley, this is right before the white prom. This is Angel, who she went to kindergarten with, but was going to the Black prom the night after. It still blows my mind that this was happening. So again, the interviews, I started doing audio interviews because the pictures alone couldn't tell the stories. And they were so brave. Angel was so brave, but she made me promise that it wouldn't be published until she graduated. So I was doing this, I pitched this to the New York Times Magazine, and in 2009, at midnight, right after their graduation, this went online, and it was a story about their segregated prom in 2009. And the amazing thing, why I'm so excited about photography always, is that it actually made a change. They were forced to integrate their prom the next year. And I also realized that the proms were a symptom of a much larger story about race in this town. So I knew that the photographs alone couldn't tell this story. So I started filming. So I'm just gonna show you a couple of clips.
The day you met me, when you asked me, did I go to school, was I in high school, was the proms together, I knew what it was about. And yes, I was excited, because finally, stories getting out and hoping for a change. And, I was really excited. My daddy was really excited. We was all just excited. We really wanted you to see our side.
I got in a lot of trouble with some of the students for trying to integrate it. They told me, what are you doing? It's not the parent, it is us. We don't want it together, and you need to stop trying to do this. I got cussed out. I talked to my boyfriend, and I said, let's just go to both. But when I went to buy the tickets to the white prom, I was not allowed. I was told that if my date was gonna be Black, he wouldn't be let in. So we just went to the Black prom.
I feel like the rest of the world will look at this like, what in the hell? They go to school together, they play basketball together, they cheerlead together, they're best friends. It's happening everywhere. Why can't it happen in a small town like this?
This community and this school system is fine like it is. We don't want to change it. We want to live the way our grandparents lived and the way our great-grandparents lived. Why change something that has worked? Just leave it alone.
And then even with the little kids in elementary school, they pick black elementary girl and a white elementary girl. They even make the little kids be segregated. It's so sad. I didn't even notice it. The little kids don't even know, but they're making them, learn that you are black, you are white. It's sad. I didn't even notice that.
Until just now?
Yeah, I guess I didn't recognize it till now that they are actually teaching kids to be, segregated, to be black, be white. No, be a color instead of a person. Be your color, act your color, know your place.
My grandma told me red birds and bluebirds don't nest together. He come out with a red head and a blue ass. I just don't feel like it's right. That's what my grandma told me, and I believe she was right.
This was just one of the moments.
Do not put that in my face. And the problem is you are not supposed to be on school property unless you are signed in.
Hey,
Oh, okay.
what newspaper are you with?
What?
What newspaper are you with?
This is our property.
You got problem, honey.
So that was the county sheriff, and that just gave me more kind of fire in my belly that there was a really important story to tell in this community. So I extended it much larger than prom, and yeah, but my finger had the card fall out, and then I gave it away. I was fast on my feet. This is titled Public Shaming. And I could talk so much more about these, but I don't have time. And I revisit a lot of people I photographed. So this is Naisha, who is the prom queen of 2009. And then there was a racially charged murder in town. Kiki's first love, her boyfriend, Justin Patterson, was shot and killed by an older white man in the town. And I knew the whole family because I'd been photographing them for so many years at their prom. So a story that I thought I was making about segregated proms ended up being about really this family seeking justice for their son. So you can see the film, it's on HBO. And the book is Southern Rights. And that was the cover of that is the first integrated prom. So I thought that was, I used that as the cover because I thought it was kind of symbolic. And this is just an example. I think it's really important to use photography for educational purposes. So this is a traveling exhibition that goes to museums that are connected to, it goes to larger museums, but also museums connected to universities, so it could be part of curriculum. So this has traveled to several venues and continues to travel. Another project that I wanted to talk about is Testimony. This was in 2002. It began during the second Antifada, and it's crazy where we are right now because basically it's the same situation, but it was at a time where I felt like in order to have an opinion about this place that is such a complicated place, I had to go there with my camera. So I kind of did like a Robert Frank road trip through the country, and I photographed throughout Israel, Gaza, and the West Bank. And I just photographed everyone that I possibly could and who I could. It's titled Testimony because you see everyone wrote in this book. I traveled around with a journal. So I have these journals that just feel kind of like gold to me now. I look back on them, and it's crazy that, over 20 years later, we're kind of in the same situation when there was actually, in these pages, a lot of hope. I was really interested in the Arab population, the Palestinians who lived within Israel. So Madeline is 18, and a lot of her Jewish friends went to the military, but if you are Muslim, you can't go to the Israeli military. I was really interested in neighborhoods where they were very mixed. So I spent a lot of time in neighborhoods where there was like the picture of coexistence because I felt so hopeful and inspired by these places and wanted to show that. This is Kinneret, who and why I'm actually jet lagged is because I just got back from photographing her again. And I'll just read you her testimony. At the age of 25, I celebrated my birthday in Sinai with my boyfriend Tal. I was a student of reflexology and a bartender on Allenby Street. I lived in an apartment with Tal and 2 dogs in Tel Aviv. Now at the age of 25, I'm a victim of terror fighting for my independence, with many years of rehabilitation to come. I am burned on 70% of my body. I just celebrated my birthday in the park with a very select group of people. Because of this group's belief and love for me, I realize there is a reason to live and live it at any price. I won the knowledge to discover exactly what I'm worth, to understand that although there is so much suffering in the world, there is also much happiness and joy. I feel blessed to experience both deeply. Like my best friend in her wheelchair says, there is an angel in every one of us, and we, the cripples, are the ones who learn this. My goal is to show the world that the force of life is stronger than anything, and love, the will to live, is all that really matters. No religions, no borders, no nothing, just this. And what I wanted to do is, it was crazy that, to me, that these people whose lives, civilians whose lives were ruined and they're maimed for the rest of their lives, could have hope and also empathy. Kinneret said to me in the hospital bed, who was in so much pain that they could do this to me? So I thought that there was a larger story here, and that is when I also began photographing civilians in the West Bank and Gaza who were also casualties of this government. And this is Samar and Rawan. On Thursday, July 19th, 2001, we were returning home from a relative's wedding, happy after a great night. We were taken by surprise by a Jewish settler's car. They opened fire at us. I didn't see anything but a flash, and then I felt warm over my entire body. I woke up in the hospital. They told me 3 were killed in the car. My daughter Amira was injured. Rawan was fine, but she almost bled to death. I was shot by 4 bullets in the back, shoulders, pelvis, and colon. Thank God we are still alive. I'm lucky, but I'm thinking now about my daughter's future. How is she going to live with a deformity? I try to give my children a normal life. I don't want to teach them to hate. I don't want my children to hate Jews. We used to live well without any trouble with anyone, but then disasters came to us. And this is Murad. And I'm still, again, this was a book and part of an exhibition, but I'm so kind of committed to the people that I photograph and the stories and the that I'm still there photographing and figuring out kind of how to tell this story now. Okay, this is something very different. It's a very crazy transition, sorry about that, but this is closer to home. And this is a family, a project that I started without any intention of it being a project, but after photographing my family for 20 years, just because life is life, it turned into a project. And I'm gonna show you this performance that I did, which will explain how this book came to be, if that makes sense. You can make it louder, this one. In the winter of 1999, I was a student at the International Center of Photography on the Upper East Side. One afternoon, I was taking a cigarette break with classmates when one of them, a Norwegian guy working on a project about capitalism, pointed to some people walking up the sidewalk. "Look at those vulgar women in their fancy fur coats," he said. I nodded in agreement at the ladies, their lipstick so bright we could see it from half a block away. But as they came closer, I realized something. Among them were my mom, my grandmother, and my aunt. Gillian, oh my God, what are you doing up here? Before I could run and hide, they surrounded me with heavily perfumed hugs and kisses. I come from a family of very expressive people, not just in how they talk, but in how they present themselves too. Most of the time, I got a kick out of them, but in moments like that one on the sidewalk, I felt mortified. I was embarrassed by what people like my classmates saw as privileged decadence. I knew I had to get closer to what was making me so uncomfortable. So over the next several years, I photographed my family everywhere. At holidays, bar mitzvahs, weddings, brisses, poolside barbecues, and vacations. But the more time I spent documenting them, the more I felt guilty for having been ashamed of them, and I came to appreciate their lavish kind of love and optimistic way of embracing life.
Leon, my love, this is Grandpa. I want to wish you a wonderful trip. Stay in good health. I'm going to miss you. Gillian, it's Aunt Doris. I just got those pictures. I'm out of my mind with them. I think they're the greatest. And you two for sending them to me. Thanks, love. Love you. Hi, Willie. It's Poppy. I woke up this morning. I said, I missed yesterday. I had such a pleasurable, one of the most pleasurable days I've ever had with my daughter. I love you. Have a safe trip. Goodbye. I just called to say I love you.
It seemed that the camera, despite being an inherent buffer between me and them, didn't create distance. It actually brought us closer together. That is, until last June.
He's going to make America great again. Watch and see.
Look, my parents have always said they're fiscally conservative and socially liberal. My dad gives without a second thought and is always the first to chip in for medical bills and college tuition. He gives me a hard time if I even mention private schools for my kids. My mom calls herself a flower child. Woodstock, it actually took place on her uncle's farm. Her first fiancé, he was Muslim. So while they may enjoy spending some weekends at Trump's country club and not approvingly at his pro-Israel stances, the idea that they were falling for his shtick was disturbing. And the fact that they might be promoting it was shocking, to say the least. Here's a group text amongst my family members to walk you through a few of the low points in the months that followed. I called out Trump's misogyny and sexism. My father told me to stop being part of those bullshit elites. I told them Hillary would be the best president we've ever had. My brother-in-law called her a murderer and sent me graphic and gory Benghazi-related memes. I made a Nazi reference. They made jokes so graphic I can't comfortably repeat them. My mom mostly tried to stay out of it, but couldn't resist occasionally chiming in to call Hillary selfish and a liar. It got so ugly, so brutal, that before long I found myself waking up in the middle of the night with my fingers flying into text rants. Like so many of us, I wanted desperately to sway them with facts. But even more, I wanted to pull these people that were moving away in some kind of awful tectonic shift back in close. At one point, my sister Allie tried to intervene.
Gillian, seriously, you've got to cut the shit. I mean, I don't know why I can listen to both sides and put it aside, even if we don't agree. I can put it aside and be your sister and your family. You're gonna, ruin our family over this? All right, I love you. Call me back, bye.
Was she right? Before I knew it, my mother was texting me from Trump's election night party. That's when I decided to skip Thanksgiving. But that was inconceivable. I've been photographing our family Thanksgivings for 2 decades. So instead, I joined my family at my sister's, and my camera served more as armor than ever before. I photographed my nephew in his bedroom, my mom in the living room. I felt like I was visiting a cult. My entire family had become so alien to me. But then I walked into the kitchen and saw my parents in their novelty aprons, and I had to laugh. I watched my mom dote on her grandchildren, my children, and I remembered how she doted on her parents when they were sick and at the end of their lives. And there was my dad, triumphant as always, with his hands covered in grease and an enormous turkey to feed us. This is a man, I thought, who lives to provide for everyone. It was time to sit down for dinner. Two months later, on January 20th, my parents and I were all in DC. They were there for the inauguration. I was there to photograph the Women's March. Right before the inaugural ball, I took their portrait in their hotel lobby near a group of women's marchers. "Who are those people?" several said behind my back. I turned around and said, "Those are my parents." Later, I stood really enjoying some hecklers chastising guests going into the ball. One woman in a red sequin dress yelled at me, "Go get a job." And a tuxedo man old enough to be my grandfather gave me the finger. Once they all went inside, we migrated to the exit to catch them at the other end. When I was about ready to call it a night, look who walked out the door. Since then, I've kept hoping my family will see the light. But except for my sister, who's had some regrets, not much has changed. I still can't make excuses for them. But I also know that the complexity we find in people, whether as family or photographer, can have its own strange and dark beauty. One I've had to accept, whether I've wanted to or not. Thank you. So I'll end there. I have more slides, but I think that that's a good ending. My time is up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gillian. Our next speaker tonight is Shelia Pepe. Yeah, give it up. That's all right. You can get loud. As an artist and educator, Shelia likes to trespass between disciplinary boundaries and has been working in various sculptural media since 1995. Her work has been shown nationally and internationally, including venues such as the De Cordova Sculpture Park and Museum, the Minnesota Museum of American Art, the Bemis Center for the Arts, among many others. She has taught at Bard, Columbia, Pratt, RISD, Stanford, VCU, Williams College, and Yale. She was a resident faculty at Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture, and most recently at Dartmouth University. So please let me welcome Shelia.
So I need the little clicky. And I'm just gonna, I'm from Jersey. And live in Brooklyn now. Thank you so much. So, start. I'm going to try not to talk too much. For those of you who know me, I could go on. I could be here talking to you for hours. But I'm going to start by showing you some slides of a piece called My Neighbor's Garden that I did last summer in New York inside Madison Square Park. It comprises all this crocheting done by crews, and there's lots of backstory around groups of workers and working with the horticulturalists at the park and creating these systems of elevating the work and making tents and drawings in space and making it mostly abstract with a few labia thrown in just for kicks. But, there's a desire to set the work in the place that it is. We planted native vegetables. I live in Bay Ridge, and so my neighbors' gardens are like incredibly diverse. Like some of it is crazy. There's no plants, just concrete and gnomes, and some of it is like crazy vegetables by my Chinese neighbors. I don't know what they are, but man, they can grow and make the whole lattice work better than me. So it's inspired by this idea of gardens, and that this is that neighborhood's garden. And the great thing about that garden is that everybody gets to play there, even if you don't live in that neighborhood. Best thing about New York's parks. So this is the first public art piece I ever did. I never thought I wanted to make public art. I was kind of sure that I didn't even like it. I mostly worked inside. There's what part of my desire was like, oh, I wonder if the plants could just grow and grow and grow, and then there would be no more art left. And we almost got there. But this is an enlivening of the place. There were, as you can see from the beginning, there were a lot of birthday parties under it. There were kids throwing things at it, trying to reach it. There was just a kind of interaction that I could observe without anybody knowing who the hell I was, which I enjoyed. To the point that one woman said to me as I was taking a picture, "You think it's that good?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. What do you think?" She's like, "Well," I said, "Is it really terrible?" And she's like, "Well," and I said, "Come on." She said, "Well, it would look nicer on a skirt." So I thought, I would never get that in a gallery in a million years. I'm home. I'm happy. And now I'm like, what is public art? So I have this whole new venture ahead of me. But what I like to do to this is agreed, way too quick. There's some things that I like to show just because they don't exist anymore by design. So for, let's see, what is that, 2004, maybe a little bit before that, this will go backwards, I think. And it could go forwards, but these are the first installations that I made, drawing in space with crocheted and industrial materials. When it started, it was just about doing something you're not supposed to do in an art museum, on purpose as a dyke with a crochet hook in her hand. I always thought that was good. And not everybody got it, but some people did. After time, that story, people understood what that story was. But so making New York abstraction, my reference is mid-century New York painting and drawing abstraction. I embrace my parochial aesthetic. And also tapping into ideas about the subversive stitch, feminism, the gendering of materials and methods, and also you'll see as we go backwards there's a lot, it starts with a lot of crocheted shoelaces, because I'm now in New York after 20 years in Massachusetts, having grown up. My bad joke is took me 20 years and a trip to Massachusetts to cross the river from Jersey to Manhattan. And kind of pulling all this with me, I suddenly realized I'm in a place that I have history in, and that history is also what America has made the world believe is the center of art. You know, for good reason, and then some not. So I'm connecting to an autobiographical story of my grandparents. My grandfather was a shoe repair guy in Lower Manhattan. I am, as we discuss every day now, a kind of a bricklayer. I like using materials that are in my junk drawer. Please ask me questions about this, because I believe it's a really rich place of controlling chaos. But, you know, I'm trying to combine things that are not logically combined conceptually, as well as aesthetically. And part of it is to say, can you crochet, and there are parallel drawings, can you make works that are somewhat normal? You know, they're not that surprising or offensive or necessarily revealing, because they're all couched in this kind of embodied abstraction with very almost hidden skill sets. For example, one of the things that is a constant in all of my work is that I make it, and then I take it apart, and then I put it back together again. And then I take it apart, and I put it back together again. And so the question was, can I make drawings that way? And yeah, I can. I made the drawing, I cut it apart, I put it back together again. And if you can see, and they're all made with like, these drawings are made with wallpaper seams. So you can't really, they're flat, they butt up against each other. You can't see unless you really know how to look carefully in that kind of physical connoisseurship way that very few people get taught how to do anymore. This kind of intense materiality that includes craft, a craft that is meant to hide the means of making. Much of the work has got multiple narratives that are stacked, autobiographical, material history, craft history, art history, history, and then means and making across the board. It's everybody from Duchamp to Grandma Prisby is in my house. You know who Grandma Prisby is? Look her up. She was pretty fantastic. And so there's this response to the materiality and the graphic of the industrial city, knowing well that it's going away, or it's not going away, but its primacy is going away. And I live in this city in 2000, 2001, that's going to become Paris very soon. And being sort of both happy and sad about it. So these simple gestures of trying to be in the environment, absorb the home of the aesthetic that I grew up in, challenge it, de-skill it, but also make observation a prime aspect of the work. And then in 2001, a whole bunch of stuff happened that affected everything. Simple gestures like moving the work from vertical to horizontal. The work gets made by making lots of parts, shipping them ahead, in the most economical way. For many years, the money side of my practice was built on an old lesbian rule at entrance of any event. It was more if you can, less if you can't. So I would talk to the curators and figure out how much money they had and how much it would cost to ship certain things and how much of the stuff could I bring on the plane with me to make it the back end of the business as, like I grew up in a mom and pop deli, to make it as mom and pop scale commerce as possible. Because this, I think, is the key to living well in community and making capitalism follow meaning instead of meaning having to run behind capitalism like a scared person. So these titles, High Hopes, Come Fly With Me, they're very much looking back to my parents' generation often, and this is looking back as part of the trying to figure out why I am where I am, why are we where we are? How did we get here? And then almost somatizing all of that through this practice of improvisational crochet, making parts upon parts upon parts. They get thrown into boxes, shipped ahead, and built in a week, 10 days, a weekend, depending on budget and accessibility. So all of these things that I'm showing you are made for the site and the show in conversation with the curator. This is probably the first big one that I made. Site responsive, fairly obtuse and open-ended, asking the viewer to investigate and sort out what it is that they're seeing, thinking about architecture, but also playing word games like lap is, because this piece is in a circular space that's a quarter lap and of the room, and that all of these parts are made in my lap. So the wordplay hopefully bats around against the physical play and being able to read the process of this thing having been made. And I say, just about anybody could make this work because you can see exactly how it's made, and likely you could tie a knot. So there's a certain kind of reveal to all of it that I feel is quirky, I don't know, is optimistic, inviting. Best read I ever got of this work, which is made up of lots of men's boot laces and some men's shoelaces, was the guard said, "It looks like a whole army of men just walked in here with their boots," and I was like, okay, I hadn't thought of that, but I'll take it. Like, you have an interpretation for me? It comes with the piece. So one of the best attributes of this work, my attempt to shrink the entire space, was that it smelled like rubber. It smelled so good. But this isn't one of the earliest works that really tries to borrow the hard surfaces, the power of the hard surfaces by matching the color. I mean, it's kind of simple. And pulling literally that color off the wall with these industrial rubber bands. And the crocheting in the windows is also early version of it and meant as a kind of window treatment, always kind of hovering around. This is an incredibly useless piece of drawing in space, and maybe I could make a window treatment. Like, I don't know. And then this is even smaller, and you can see there that there are other things happening in the periphery that are there are always simultaneous bodies of work happening at the same time, all coming out. I'll show you soon. So this is the first piece I made in New York. Josephine. Josephine was my mother. Josephine taught me how to crochet. And this is the first use of crocheted work, making shadows, which had been the work you'll see going backwards that I jumped into the art world with, making shadows. And because Josephine taught me how to crochet, now the pictures would be about Josephine. What I learned about mothers of my generation, unless they had some kind of public existence that other people knew of, no one could read the story of Josephine and me except for my sister. And it was a really big lesson of being able to recognize signs embedded in a work of art. And what I realized was that, was Josephine the little church with the big vagina, or the skyscraper who was like kind of leaning over trying to protect the little church, or maybe trying to kill the little church, I don't know. Or was I the little church with the big vagina? And it's not a vagina, I know, it's like one of those, but it looks like vagina. Like, who cares? My sister and I could discuss which one was what with great meaning and great detail, but nobody else could do that, except for they did know there was a little church with this Gothic thing that kind of looked like a big vagina and a wiggly skyscraper. And that tension is basically what my entire life is about. And I would guess many of us, I would guess more women than men, because, well, I don't want to get into the gender thing, because I'm cis generation and I'm just catching on. That's a conversation that a lot of people could have about the culture we live in, about the world we live in. So that I care about those kind of differences and recognizing them and arguing about them. So this is where that work comes from. This is 1994. This is the work I got into Skowhegan with. This is the work that I jumped into the art world with. And it was the expression of two kinds of messages about the world and about making art, which was, you can either make pictures or sculpture. You can either make representation or abstraction, but you can't do both. Sorry. And I was like, I am both, I'm gonna do both, and I'm gonna link them, this is to our class from earlier, I'm gonna link them with this fact that you cannot argue with, which is, I plugged this light in the wall and tapped this huge infrastructure that we all live by and shined a light that you can see, and it makes this difference happen. And my favorite thing was watching people go like this in front of the, like, how did that happen? And then, did you make the object to make the shadow? It's like, no, am I that smart? Not in a million years could I get that to look like him. Like, what's his name? With the bow and the arrow. Robin Hood, rich, poor, the whole deal. And so this is the kind of thing of building all these stories together that bounce off each other, but then coincide, and that the differences are as important as the similarities, and that, and that you have, at the time, a coping and adaptation of what was probably undiagnosed AD something, HD something that never got diagnosed in my generation. But it's like, I could work for 15 minutes at a time. That was it. So I would add 15 minutes to 15 minutes to 15 minutes. You can still see it in the work. It's this, now I do it so you can't tell. Like that the 15, now I've extended the 15 minutes, which is nice. But that the urgency of, finding a coffee cup and shoving a wire in it, and then finding somebody's plaster that hadn't completely gone foul yet, and pouring it in the bottom of that and making a thing and then finding more stuff in the trash and taping it together with rubber bands and that, okay, that's an object, makes shadow, and it's kind of interesting formally, wouldn't you say? It's kind of got a dynamism about it. It speaks to, modernist sculpture. It's not steel, but it's still working. Thank you, Richard Tuttle. That's what I want to say. So many debts to so many people. And so this is my work. Quickly, there is a kind of everything comes out of the Doppelganger series, right? I'm asking you to see these two things as doppelgangers, as likeness of each other, even though they don't look anything apart. I'm saying these two things are the same. Because that's my internal life. I'm a second-generation Italian-American woman, girl, depending on who you ask in the family, girl, woman from northern New Jersey who didn't even know there were lesbians until I was in New Haven. I thought they were only gay men. What did I know? Who has used the work to find the rest of the world that I could be living in. And why do I tell this personal story? Because I know I'm not alone. I know that many of us use our work, whatever that work might be, to find a world we don't know about yet. And we could never know about yet, except for how that brings you to people you don't know, brings you to ideas you couldn't have imagined. So I have what now I think it's called a mind map. For me, this is all about family resemblances and a long time use of Wittgenstein to keep me sane, so I didn't think I was out of my mind. When computers come, it's like, oh, everybody knows how this works. It's like, oh, we get to see it work. We get to see it work within limitations they tell you it can work within, which is troubling at best. But it's also generate, cut apart, differentiate, accumulate, parallel, duplicate, approximately, accumulate, leap, repeat. That's basically how I work. So since 1990, what happened was the doppelgangers got pulled apart. And so the objects I knew came from my first experience of sculpture, which were all the tchotchkes on our, dressers, which for me was mostly saints. And that was sculpture. There was a badly cast Mozart on top of the piano, but a sculpture bust, okay? But these became many things, including votive moderns. So they're votives, as I've always known them, but they're about the source of modern art that I am standing on. And the goal is to, over the course of my lifetime, address every different kind of art as trope or as model. Like some things are figurative, some things are drawings in space, some things are kind of a totem. None of these are more than 12 inches, most more around 7 or 8 inches tall. Best displayed, installed in relationship to other things that are very different. I don't see any of my work in a chronological way, because I figure, 80 years? You've got 50 of them working. In the scheme of things, that's not very long, and in my head, all that work is existing simultaneously. So I give myself access to it all the time at the same time. And it makes more sense when you see more different things together than if I just showed you this incredibly tight body of work that was about making only one story. You can find a lot of stories. Or I can show you all of the things that are exactly the same and find the differences and similarities among them to figure out what I mean. I told the class today that one of the things that I know to be true is that as an artist working from the Western tradition, and I could say most artists who are living in the United States, even if they're coming from another country, are working to an audience that's from the Western tradition. So we're educated in part from the Western tradition. So it's kind of a hard thing to shake loose given what America did with modernism in the world, right? We told everybody this is the most important thing in the universe. Come follow us. We'll sell your shit in New York, you know? But there are other options here, which I love and adore. But for me, my mother made me 500 meatballs every Wednesday. Meatballs are an important, let me go back. Meatballs are a very important cultural talisman, if you will. She made 500 meatballs every Wednesday at the deli. It was a big deal, and I was often like this tall, reaching over, trying to get some of that raw meat. It was like, yeah, I want that stuff. Sheila, wait for it to be cooked. No, Ma, it's good like this. Anyway, the other part is, that's not the Western tradition part. That's the Pepe family part. The Western tradition part is that painting is God. Okay, it just is. It's oldest, it's the longest, it's the oddly, it's been the same damn thing forever, whether it's on, you know, a cave wall or on an easel or on a ceiling or on a leaf or, you know, drawing's good, but it's not a high enough price point for it to have a lot of traction. Sorry. But if you know about the long history of painting, in all of the locations it came from around the world, you will then be able to understand a lot about the history of sculpture, because as we experience it, it's extremely young. The breadth of sculpture as we know it really started at the beginning of the 20th century. And a lot of the protagonists in that story were painters, even in the mid-century. Donald Judd, painter. Judy Pfaff, one of my mentors, painter. Who else? Lots of painters. Picasso, that absinthe glass and the guitars, painter. It's like, bummer. Like all this stuff that I really like, mostly painters. I want to make painting so bad that when I got out of school and I had this show at the Rose, I was like, I'm going to make a painting. It's going to be in video. I want to make like a grid dot painting, a little Eva Hesse-ish. Like, I love the painting where she's got stuff coming out. Do you know those paintings where she's got things applied to the surface and then they jut out and they're all colorful and there's yarn on some of them and then those little bluppy things are in a grid, but it's all silicone and, all right, she's one of the mothers. So this is my high-tech showing you of the video that I don't have to show you, but I'm going to show you a little bit of it. Okay, I showed you too much. Okay. Painting, public art. I hear that. There used to be this big, huge totemic sculpture in New York Bay called the Statue of Livery. It was built to welcome all the immigrants coming on ships, to announce to them what they would be doing for the next part of their life. They would be shining shoes, scrubbing floors, scrubbing pots, and getting the shaft. I've heard about this place. I would kind of prefer it. I don't really want to see a lady with a big book. I don't really know what that means. Because when they all came, all the ladies didn't really have a good shot at what was going on. It should have been a man with a big book, as far as I can tell. But this is a place that I dream about that was and could be. Maybe it'll get replaced. And that one could visit this place and make votives after it and take it home and have your own kind of household saint based on like, oh, I went to visit this big sculpture of Zeus or Minerva or Athena. I went to visit Athena. I came home. I'm not Greek. I'm Roman. I have to make myself a household god and put it in the little niche that we later call a saint. So I'm going to make my votive to that thing that I saw. And then after the votive happens, I thought it'd be great to make tchotchkes like they sell in Times Square. Little things that you could buy because you went to visit the Statue of Liberty and you want to take one home. So I'm now working with UAP, who I find to be absolutely lovely people and very fun and accommodating, and they're all artists and craftspeople and amazingly committed to working collaboration. I work the upstate New York gang, and I just think they're amazing. So these are the most current images we have to approve. I love the top view. It looks like so many things. And there we have it. So these will be maybe this tall, and there'll be a small addition. And I feel like I'm making public art, making the tchotchkes without having to do anything bigger. I'll let you have the idea of what it might be to look at the Statue of Liberty in the place of that other thing in the bay. In the harbor? What do we call it? Both. The harbor?
Lady in the harbor.
Yeah, there you go. Fatto in Italian is make. Fatto is fate. We make our fate, or fate makes us. I'm not sure which side of that argument you're on, but it seems like a good one. Yeah. All right. There you go.
Thank you both so much. If you guys want to hop up there, we have time for just one or two questions. If anybody has any, happy to pass the mic around. Yeah, go for it. Oh, Cricket, I'm coming to you.
If you have more questions.
I don't want to steal anybody else's question opportunity. Just kick us off. Okay. Thank you both so much, Gillian and Shelia. Although I don't know you intimately, it does strike me that both of you have such a strong personality and sense of humor. And I was wondering if you think it takes being a certain kind of person to make the work that you make, and what is the relationship of personality and artwork?
You could go.
All right. So you just have to recognize that you have like two people from New York here. So it could be cultural, right? In terms of our affect, no?
Possibly, yeah.
But I think you cannot be a shrinking violet. You cannot take no for an answer. It looks like you never take no for an answer, girl. Amazingly so. I'm afraid for you. But she's laughing, that's good.
Yeah, I think that, I don't have a mic, but I think I can speak. Oh, that's for me. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I can't help but, I've never been the type of fly on the wall. I'm not a fly on the wall. I'm very interactive. So everything is, I don't know, it's like an exchange. So I'm part of that exchange, for sure. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
I love this pairing because we do radically different things
Yeah.
in radically different parts of the world. It shows you how small art actually is, which I really adore, because it's acquired taste, you know, it's hard to get sometimes, and I think it should be. But that dialogue that you're engaging on this scale and I'm engaging on this other scale that requires interactivity, that's what this is all about.
Yeah. I mean, it's not just the work, it's the process and the exchange and the experience and the journey.
Arguments that you're setting up in your work, you set up very clean, clear arguments that are made so nuanced by the people in the pictures. It's like you can't, it's like there are no more rules once you start looking at the people.
Right.
Yeah.
We have another question right
Hello. My question's for Gillian.
Yeah.
When you're going into these spaces of like conflict, are you seeking this objective view, or even when it comes to like your family and you seem like you have opposing views, do you see yourself trying to have a neutral, objective eye when shooting, or does it just turn out that way?
With my family, look, I try to be open. We all have points of view. The minute you are framing, your picture, you have a point of view. Your edit, you have a point of view. You're the author of that picture. But how I like to approach everything is really with an open mind and a heart. So the camera is the way to ask the question.
Do you have a question? All right, here we go.
How do you think of your audience in this? Are they to respond to you? Are they? You seem to be beyond the audience in some sort of way.
I look at
what do you expect from them.
For me, all the work is like a Rorschach test. So everyone looks, and I find this fascinating, and I always take it to the next level where it's kind of the Family Matters. I have a kind of a feedback because I'm so interested in how people perceive things, and everyone sees a different thing looking at the same thing, and that to me is fascinating. Oh yeah, in so many. I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, that's part of it, and it's also the work for me is about creating dialogue. So it's really about, it's not who is looking or who the audience is. It's more like what are they? How are they interacting with the work? And what is it doing for them? So just with Family Matters, it felt like I was really nervous to put that into the world, but it felt urgent because it felt like so many people were dealing with the same thing. But at the time, nobody was talking about it. So it really felt like it was therapeutic for me to do that work. But then people viewing it, like people gave the book to family members who they hadn't talked to in a couple of years. So that, to me, it's about really dialogue and building bridges.
One last question.
Thank you both for the talk. My question is for Gillian. With that last piece, Family Matters, how did you think about, how did you decide on the performative element of presenting that work?
I got approached to make a piece, and it wasn't really something that I basically, the timing of somebody asking me to make something, and I said, they said, oh, we really love the work that you do in your family. I'm like, this is not a good time. I'm not doing anything about my family right now. And of course, that was like, wait, what is going on? So it actually, I took it with a lot of trepidation because it really was the first time. I mean, a lot of that was like a secret. So I made a lot of those pictures and didn't show them to anyone. So I was kind of coming to grips with my situation, and if you saw, my parents were in the audience. So it was the whole act of it was like, it wasn't easy. It was like with a lot of trepidation, but that was the point, is like the work helped me work through it. Does that answer your question? I don't know.
Thank you both so much. I encourage everyone to pop through the studios if you have any additional questions for them and see what their students are working on Friday. Thanks, guys.